So you talked about the hierarchy of education, and you also discussed the economic aspects of how education is formulated. And I found this really fascinating because this is one of my pet topics. I'm involved with a nonprofit called ACE Foundation Canada, and our job is educational outreach, international outreach, tutoring and mentoring, and I'm personally in charge of educational advocacy. So this extends to talking about ideas from students to the government and trying to relate. Eventually, we might even be having a conference to invite students, public school students from across British Columbia to come and ask the government for changes that they want made. There's a lot of aspects to it, and when having such an initiative, it's really important to focus on not having the requests be too grand, and that makes me a little bit sad. And I feel I should be able to unload my theories about the linear education system onto this video because, honestly, the opportunity to do that, it's kind of limited. In terms of changing how the system works, you talked about how a lot of it is about where the jobs are. And I find it really problematic that in our world we tend to value associated income levels after graduation with the value of the degree. And there's a problem some people seem to have noticed. It's the devaluation of certain programs um, due to just the demand and the supply. So just basic economic concepts that the degree supply of people coming out of university with undergraduate degrees, whether it's in the sciences or the arts, mostly the arts to be honest, and as a result arts degrees are valued less, and even some sciences degrees are becoming fully worthless. To this point it's extending far into even master's programs, graduate studies, and the United States there's this complex, this industrial system, and it's financial incentive to have universities. Universities are no longer the places of higher learning that exist. They're now establishments for income, and it's a big problem when we promise the dream through advertising. We say, okay, so you're a smart person, you must go to university, this is your place in life, and if you don't go into this particular direction, what are you doing with yourself? Oh, you're going to work a minimum wage job the rest of your life? This is the dream that advertising sells to us. And I find it really problematic, especially when students expect that this degree will mean something, because that's the idea they've been sold for many, many years of their life. Everyone says, don't quit school, go to university, get this done. But in the United States, not so much in Canada, there's um, this great problem building in which people with PhDs. I remember there was this interview. I think it was The Atlantic that did it with a woman that has a PhD in medieval history, and she lives on food stamps, like many people with PhDs in the United States. Tenure track is extremely problematic, and this is a problem that affects graduate students more than anything. Universities, to get certain endowments from the government, decide to offer PhD programs, even though there's no more demand for PhD students and eventually professors. So there's this gigantic problem with this happening where people, well not people, but institutions are severely over, what's the term here, over-enrolling students into these programs, and in many cases the competition gets to be this hundreds of new PhD students every single year in every program imaginable, and the professors retiring, many of them retire way past 60. Some of them retire in their 80s, some of them don't retire at all, and the ones that do retire, it's one PhD professor that has had years of experience retiring, and then there's 20 students with PhDs living on food stamps competing for one position. I feel this really ties back into the whole idea of a linear system, how it's economics based. It's not about the process itself. And I mean, this is the underlying issue. It's not about how we as a society look at it. It's not about what small changes we can make to address the way in which advancement works, in that you have this, and you have this, and you have this, and you're slowly moving up. You're not looking into branches. You're trying to get into one path to have a career. And the issue behind all of this, and the only way to solve this, is to consider the impact that profit-based society has on us humanity as a whole. And without doing that, we really won't get anywhere. Another aspect to education and criticism of the current education system in place is that it's extremely focused on fitting to curriculums. And I understand the necessity for that, obviously. Once you have a big population, once you have literally millions of people interested in maybe going to post-secondary education, it becomes very problematic if there's different curriculums, and standardization is the way to have admission to university be more concise and more straightforward rather than a case-by-case basis, as much as that may be the solution to a lot of educational problems. I found that in terms of the curriculum, a lot of it is based on the funding and just bureaucracy loopholes. Um, I took a lot of online courses to graduate early. I'm graduating 1 year early from high school, and I found that to get through that whole process, I had to do a lot of work. I had to coordinate with my home institution, my school, the secondary school. I go to the brick school, and then I had to also coordinate with the staff that sometimes was there, sometimes wasn't there at Surrey Connect, which is the online school I went to. Um, it's extremely problematic because as much as the ideal is for all of it to be online and all of it to be just managed online, there's a great necessity to constantly call, to constantly visit, to get anything done, to get a final mark. Yeah, you have to go over there, you have to email them 20 times. And I found just the bureaucracy behind it is really bad. The reason that students can't coordinate their own learning plan and personalize their learning experience, say, I want to take this class online, I want to take this class from this school, and I want to take this class from this school, is the way in which budgeting works. So we have students enrolled in certain schools, home schools, and this is something I would like change. It sounds really confusing and it's hard to explain, but it's the idea that rather than you being a student at University Hill, or a student at Saints, or a student at York House, or a student at Semiamu, like I am technically, you would rather just be a learner with the Ministry of Education or your school district, going another step below with the whole bureaucracy thing, and you would take courses within your school district, whatever worked for you. And this is a really big change. It's something that I don't see happening anytime in the next 20 years. But ideally, I feel this would work best for students because the availability of certain courses and the fact that there has to be, I think 20 students in a class for the class to even be available for all students, it severely limits the degree to which students can expand their learning experience. So everyone is just being pushed down a certain path, and this is just really problematic. I'm going to shamelessly plug my foundation here, like ACE Foundation Canada on Facebook, ACE Foundation, and I'll put a link below. I think we'll have a few interesting things in the next few months and a lot of initiatives to get students more empowered with their own education. And this conference thing that I've mentioned, I really want to get it off the ground. So, shameless plug.